So I've been down at the Gallery Aquatica store at Salisbury today, but I've come back up to Wynnum because this man here, who I saw about a year and a half ago, we had a really good conversation about, I think it was purple chromis back then.
Yeah.
And I was here yesterday and we had a great conversation about blue-green chromis and about just trying to get some of those aesthetic effects that we might see on the reefs when we're snorkeling or diving or on video, and how to get that into our aquarium. And we were touching on the BRS video where it has the school of chromis and maybe a predator in there, but you also had a great idea about some other types of smaller fish.
I haven't actually watched yet.
Yeah, that's all right. But you also had some ideas. So the reason for this is I want to try and pick your brains and see what's floating around in your mind. You're a fish guy, I'm a fish guy, I love that kind of thing. And see what kind of slightly left of field ideas you've had about how people can start using fish where they haven't thought so of doing before.
Yep.
Tell us about your idea with the half and half, or the
Well, I've noticed that the half and half chromis tend to bully the blue greens quite a lot. In a smaller tank, not ideal, but a bigger tank with a lot of blue greens where you can disperse out that aggression, no individuals getting picked on.
Yep.
The hopes that maybe they might almost act like sheepdogs, I guess.
Yes.
Like collies, like herd them. They want to push them with territory. Chromis there's no territory for them, so they're sort of just balling up, hopefully, to get away or have that safety of numbers from the half and half chromis.
Yeah.
And get the similar effect as if you would have a predator without
The danger.
the risk of loss of the chromis from predation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I touched on also yesterday that naturally the chromis viridis would actually be found in the same coral heads with humbugs.
Yeah.
So potentially playing with a pair of humbugs amongst a school of blue-green chromis might actually have a similar effect. Have you? But you had very bad experience with humbugs, haven't you?
No, I haven't personally. It's just everything I get told from customers and other people in the industry. But I haven't personally had them. So I don't know too much for that.
I can't help but feel like in marine land, there's an evolution whereby maybe 20 years ago, it was just you're in a process of trying to actually keep things alive.
Yeah.
Then you're in a process where technology catches up and you can keep things alive. Then what happens after that, and I saw this in the reptile hobby as well, all of a sudden, you can keep things alive, so you want everything.
Yep.
And then the collectoritis sets in, and that's kind of the last probably 5-10 years. Absolutely. And you get the waves. You go from acros, you go to the zoes, you go to the fluffies, you go to the hammers or the torches.
Everything.
Yeah. And then what I'm thinking, and the reason I'm interested in this sort of topic is because I can't help but feel when that collectoritis dies down and everyone realises, no, we don't have to do all that at once. We don't have to chase that. We can actually pursue little niches that we enjoy.
And a little bit more of realising what you personally enjoy rather than what other people are trending to enjoy.
Yep.
And what's available, going through, it's fancy, it's new and exciting, but do I actually like it?
Yep.
Or do I want to pick something more simple, more suited to yourself, or stay in that direction even?
Yeah. And I think that's part of the reason why I want to come here and talk to the Gallery Aquatica staff and Cam today, was because I'm interested in what you guys think as opposed to what Instagram thinks or what the social media is telling you that should be. Like I think I told you, I know I told Cam, the other day, 2 days ago, I took off 2 panels off my shed roof to let sunlight in with clear alcinite. And the coloration in the tank is absolutely blown out completely. You cannot see any blue. Most people would absolutely hate it because green palithoa are now a brown olive colour. The fish are absolutely stunning. And it's what I see when I go snorkeling. And that's what I want in my tank because I bring that memory home from snorkeling.
We do get some people who come in from that snorkeling interest rather than hobby interest. Like someone who's come from freshwater versus someone who dives a lot and then wants to have it in their home. And it's funny, the people who come from diving, they always want that tank. But obviously the hobby is a little bit more leaning to blue. But yeah, they do come along.
There was a really classic image in my mind. I think it was from when there was MASA, the Marine Aquarium Society of Australia Forum, I think, or someone
It's
had.
still going.
Is it?
Yeah, it's alive.
But I remember there was a thumbnail and it had a Picasso triggerfish on it, and then there was some humbugs, and I think there was chromis. And it makes me think of the shallows of when I was at Fiji or snorkeling or something, and then literally water, it's only ½ metre deep. There were Picassos everywhere, and there was these damsels and the chromis.
I love the domino damsels in Fiji.
Isolated coral heads, white light, white sand, and it was beautiful.
Even the seagrass beds.
Yep.
That was my favourite, seagrass beds. Yeah.
So, question for you. 3 questions for you.
Yep.
What is the most underrated fish that is in this system here, according to you now, today? Not what you can get, what's here today.
I think the scarlet soldierfish.
Oh, that's what we talked about yesterday. That's these guys up here.
They're one of my favourites. I think always super underrated. Very cute, very peaceful, as long as it doesn't fit in their mouth and it's food.
And a colour which is very different to what, like being red.
That nice red, yeah. Not quite that strong, rich flame hawk red, but they're nice red.
Yeah. And my first thought was, because I had one of those guys at my home, in one of my home aquariums, only by himself, he's a lot bigger than that, but he comes out and feeds, but he's under his cave the whole time. But you actually said something different to me yesterday.
Similar to most schooling fish, numbers. Just needing numbers.
Yeah.
And once they've got a couple of friends, their confidence goes up.
Yeah.
They get really tame, really tame. You hand feed them, you go in there with your hands, they don't run away much. And they beg for food like...
How would an amazing display be if you actually had a rock structure that came up the back to form an open-faced cave viewing towards the front with coral at the top, and then you could have a school of these guys, a school of cardinal fish, even some of the bullseyes, which are the or eastern pomfrets in there, for example, and you get this almost semi-twilight effect where you got schooling fish that will come out into the open and then just come back and drift back inside again.
Yeah,
that's what I love.
When you walk up, they come out and sit around.
Yeah.
Otherwise, wouldn't necessarily notice them in there.
Yep, absolutely.
Yep.
So what is the most underrated coral / invert that you have in this shop today? Which also can be code for favourite, if you think about it in a reverse sense. I
don't have a warning for this, I've got to think about it. Maybe some of the low light styled encrusting Pavonas. You get some cool colours. There's one that I haven't seen in a long time, but we tend to get the oranges. They get looked over a lot.
So not a Pavona cactus, not a chip?
No, the encrusting one with it, it's a lot of, they get a big skirt on them, big fleshy skirt.
So why is it underrated though?
I just think they get looked over for Monties and other encrusting chalice and stuff.
Yep.
Whereas they're really nice ones. You get a decent sized piece of it grown out from a frag. When you get the frag, you don't get that frill look to it, and that polyp extension. Once they're settled into a bigger colony, it shows off more in the flow. You get that flapping of it.
All right.
I think they're really nice.
All right.
But they also no one looks at them unless you directly point it out.
Yeah.
And then their eyes open.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it is kind of an apricot kind of colour.
Yeah.
Which I guess other than Leptocerus doesn't very commonly get in coral necessarily.
Yeah, not really, no.
So last question for you. What would be the most underrated piece of hardware or equipment in the store today? Don't have to be big. Just something which you think is an amazing thing to have in your arsenal, but you find doesn't get picked up off the shelf so much.
I think maybe an auto feeder, but not for when you're away, for every day.
Which brings us back to the school of blue-green chromis.
Yeah. Cause, having that scheduled routine, regularity, fish can expect the food.
Yeah.
If something happens at work or social life, whatever, the fish are covered. You don't have to, I've got to go home and feed the fish, or they're going to miss food today. Yeah. They're covered. And then you can do your individual extra feedings.
Yep.
But at least the baseline's covered.
Have you found that when you're listening to social media or YouTube or podcasts or whatever, that there's a lot of push that you're feeding too much?
Yeah.
Guaranteed you're feeding too much. And I know I feed about 5 or 6 times a day.
Yep.
Algae, pellets, as well as live foods, as well as seafoods.
No,
I've got nutrients.
Big on food.
Yeah.
Big on food.
Yeah.
So I would say, I think if it comes down to maybe the waste at the end of the day.
Yep.
Looking at a better way to remove those wastes from the tank rather than remove some of the food for the fish.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, the food is the health.
Yep.
So if you take back on the food, you might have less nutrient in the water, but the other fish as healthy as they will be if you were doing the extra food.
Yep.
And too much food, if I think it only is really a thing if they're not eating it and it's sitting there decaying on the bottom.
Do you think that we may have circled back all the way around to one of the points that was the hobby is potentially maturing and evolving in a way where we have to split out what we're looking for and what our objectives are, rather than having one tank that tries to cover all bases?
Yeah, totally.
And so you starve your fish so your corals have reasonable levels of phosphates, but rather go, well, hang on a minute, I want to keep high energy Anthias and Wrasses and chromis, and I want to feed 6, 7, 8 times a day in high current, and I'm going to choose certain species of coral to suit that.
On top of that, another point for the extra food is these fish getting along if their nutritional needs are met.
Yep.
Which, if their nutritional needs are met, to an extent you'd think in the wild they go, oh, there's too many fish of this kind in this area, then you get a bit more aggression.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to spread it out.
Compete for resource.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, certain corals are going to love all that extra nutrient in the water, not nutrient, the food going in.
Yeah.
Which I'm a big fan for that situation of flake food, because it's soft for the fish to eat. It's in the water column more, which is more available for them to actually eat, such as a lot of schooling fish. If it drops past them too quick and it's on the bottom, they might not eat it.
Yeah.
Whereas the flake will float around.
You know, the other thing about flake food is I've found that sometimes a finicky eater will have a crack at a flake when it gets that kind of shape, like a nudibranch almost.
Or it hooks on a rock.
But it won't for a pellet.
Yep.
And
Totally.
so, like a copper band butterfly, in fact, other types of butterfly fish I've had.
Angels especially.
Yeah, it's like there's something about that all of a sudden gets the attention, but a pellet just going like that doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more interesting.
Yeah.
And a pellet to an extent looks like a bit of gravel, doesn't it? A bit
Pretty
of
much.
rubbly sand, whatever.
Pretty much.
Yeah, poop.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not they eat enough of their own.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then the coral can eat the flake as well. You'll see coral grab flake all the time.
Yeah, okay.
As it floats past, they'll grab it.
Yeah.
So it's extra food for the coral.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rory.
Sweet.
Now it's
Thank
on time.
you.
Now it's on time for the boss. Now, boss
Cool.
and a beer,
Yeah, cool.
and you're off to the gym.
I'll go have a beer first.